This is H.D. Ingalls, and I want to give you another episode of Fascinating Facts, broadcast on the RU Nuts Network. This episode is about artificial intelligence. I hope I don't bore you. One last thing. This one is rather long, so not real long, but I'm relying on my low-energy teleprompter. Ha! Okay, here we go. Artificial intelligence. For starters, I make no claim to being anywhere near an expert on artificial intelligence, or as most call it, AI. I do, though, feel I have enough background and experience to claim I know a little bit about computers. Start with technology plays a big part of AI. It must be understood that the advances of AI today are primarily because of technology. Both computer speed and data transmission speed have increased dramatically since 1970. So, what the heck is AI? First, some vocabulary. I think we all have an idea of what artificial means. Now, intelligence, as defined by Merriam-Webster, is 1. The ability to learn or understand or to deal with new or trying situations. In other words, reason. 2. The ability to apply knowledge to manipulate one's environment or to think abstractly as measured by objective criteria such as tests. And number 3, mental acuteness, or a better word, maybe shrewdness. Now, there is such a thing as mechanical intelligence. This is something done, for lack of a better word, mechanically. That is something which can be obtained with no AI. A simple example would be setting an alarm clock. The clock has no intelligence. It's just that when the clock's hands get to a place determined by a human, an alarm goes off. There are many examples of this in everyday life. If you think on it, a computer really doesn't know anything. Any knowledge it obtains is either by programming the information into the code, or as with the internet, search all over the place for it. All of this requires clever programming by human intelligence. For example, a question is asked, "What is Jupiter?" The computer, after searching the internet, may respond, "A planet or an ancient god." You got the idea. Now there's a little more to think about. A human infant knows absolutely nothing and obtains information through its senses, just about the same way the computer does, except the infant is a little bit bitter. Now, there is a danger with the computer's information. This is true for either attempts at AI or real AI. And it is the same for somebody doing a Google search. Is the selected computer information biased? This all boils down to the integrity of the human programmers. Now, my first, for lack of a better word, AI experience. Around 1970 or 71, while I was a student at NCSU, North Carolina State University, I took an AI class. The school had one of the larger IBM computers, which for that time had a large amount of memory and was considered quite fast. We could only run our AI programs in the evenings because the required software consumed almost all of the computer's capability. I wrote a small AI program, which really wasn't AI if you think about it. Truth is, the only real intelligence was the programmers who developed the underlying code, which allowed me to write my little AI program. The underlying code did all the work. My program just gave it directions. I wrote a simple thing about General Grant smoking big black cigars. What else? You could key in a question and my program answered. The only problem was I had to have the answers in my code. For example, you ask, what kind of cigars did General Grant smoke? I answered, General Grant smoked big black cigars. There were a few other questions my code could answer, but that's it. Fairly simple. So, the only real intelligence was the programmers parsing an English sentence and trying to find an answer in a list of answers. Oh God, the telephone. I forget it. So, from my point of view, it was all human intelligence. But it made me wonder. Now let's talk about some misconceptions. I believe that you hear and see things which are perceived as AI, but are really basic physics, that is, electronics. For starters, all sounds and visual information are transmitted as sine waves, or they call them sinusoidal waves. Sine waves are referred to as being analog, and that doesn't work in digital computers. Now let's talk about voice. The analog data must be transformed into digital data, a series of ones and zeros. Okay? The ability to do this has been around for over 50 years. This is accomplished by sampling an analog signal and noting its amplitude, which is translated to a number. Now, if this is done in periodic intervals to produce a series of numbers or dots on a graph. So, if the samples are close enough in time, by connecting the dots, the analog signal can be reproduced. If I remember correctly, the human voice can be reproduced with about 4K samples per second. The more samples per second, the better the reproduction. Think about a dot chart, Okay. If you can remember back towards the end of the last century, you had to get new telephones. That is because telephone companies changed their line switching networks from analog to digital. Prior to that, you spoke analog into a telephone, the analog message zipped along the telephone cables, and the analog message came into the receiving telephone. Well, now the transmissions are a series of ones and zeros. So what have I told you? Well, it's this. Voice in digital form can easily be saved in a computer. Now, with some clever programming and enough voice samples, anybody's voice can be reproduced. But that is clever programming. But as far as I'm concerned, that ain't AI. My opinion. Let's talk about video. The analog sampling principle used in audio can also be used in video, except you need a heck of a lot more samples per second because of the much higher frequencies. Think about television. Older TV sets use a cathode ray tube, or a CRT, to scan lines across the screen to produce images. By the way, the CRT, you probably know this, was big and bulky. Modern TV sets have a whole bunch, and I mean a lot, of teeny little light-emitting elements, which, when fed a number, produce a light. The number determines the color displayed, and each dot of light is referred to as a pixel. Given a whole bunch of dots of light, you have video. And this is what allows for flat screens. A photograph's about the same, except instead of a moving image on a TV, you can get a simple picture. Now, if I can produce a digital image that is a bunch of dots of a face, I can move those dots around and give that face various expressions. I can move those dots around mix it with digital audio and make the face appear to be talking. Truth is, I can make a refrigerator appear to be talking. To make another step, I can make a cartoon using real things or people instead of drawings. Now that is clever programming, but as far as I am concerned, that ain't AI. Okay. Now let's talk about real AI. Artificial or not, intelligence requires not only the ability to reason, but a sense of self-awareness. In other words, what you see on Star Trek is not around yet. As a matter of fact, the best movie about AI I have ever seen was made in 1970, Colossus, The Forbin Project. It's a very good movie and can be found on the internet. It is a good movie. I'm not saying we will never get there. I'm merely saying we have a long way to go. I guess that the greatest computer ever created so far is the human brain, not mine necessarily. And it will take a while to get there. Okay, now a big deal. Energy required. Now, start with the estimated AI servers becoming operational in the near future. The AI boom is growing rapidly. It is projected that 1.5 million AI servers could be operational by 2027, with many millions more in following years. And the energy requirements are setting off alarm bells. Well, shoot. It is estimated that annual electricity consumption of 1.5 million AI servers running at full capacity would be at least 85.4 trillion watt hours. That is more than many small countries use in a year. A lot of energy. An additional cost. Global data centers, on average, will add 50% to their energy cost just to keep the machines cool. Well, that's it, folks. I hope you enjoyed this little fact.